Hello, my dog loving friends. Any conversation about leadership brings up two words that drive me a cray cray: dominant and submissive. What is my problem with dominant and submissive? Dominant and submissive are rough terms used to describe reactions to a given situation. Here's the thing about status: it's relational, it's dependent on who is in the relationship and what the situation is, because for some dogs they will only bring their status to bear on something that is important to them. For some dogs a lot of things are important to them. For many dogs very little is important to them. I don't describe my husband, my sister, my mother as dominant or submissive. I might describe them as persistent, uh, intensely aware of people's feelings and intentions, confident, assertive. Those all have different feelings associated as opposed to dominant. I might describe my dog or somebody else that's important to me as easygoing, affable, um, uh, hates conflict, like tries to avoid conflict at all possible. Easygoing, agreeable. All of those have different emotions versus submissive. Does that make sense? And so when we start to describe our dogs, if we lock ourselves into dominant or submissive, we miss a range of gray, all these other shades. And so I would encourage you, don't just lump your dog into a dominant or submissive. Like, start to really look at them as you would a friend, a family member. Because if I said to you, my husband's dominant, you would be like, that's an interesting way to describe your husband. Uh, and if my husband was like, oh, my wife, she's so submissive, it's a little weird, don't you think? And yet, when it comes to our dogs, so many people just, they're well, it depends. Like, I might be more dominant when it comes to how I want the dishwasher loaded, right? Whereas my husband's like, I don't really care. Load the dishwasher however you want. It's not a hill I'm going to die on. So if you start to think about your dogs that way, and with shades of gray, and situationally and relationally, you'll have a better understanding of status, because status is fluid. It is dependent on who's having the conversation, what the conversation is about, how important it is to you. The other thing that I would encourage you to think about is each one of your dogs is an individual, just like your relationships in day-to-day living. Your relationship with your mom is different than your dad versus your sister, your brother, your parent, or I mean your spouse, your coworker, your boss. All of those require different skills, different approaches from you. Again, it's context, it's relational, and so do your dogs. So how you interact with one dog might not be how you need to interact with another dog. You might need to be a little bit more firm. And it gets really fun when they're all in the same house and you just want to interact one particular way with all your dogs. That doesn't tend to work. And that's where a lot of people struggle with their animals, because they only have, when it comes to dogs, they only have one leadership style or type, I guess. And if it works for 3 out of the 4 dogs, or 2 out of the 3, or 1 out of the 2, the other one is like, oh, that doesn't really work for me. That's where problems can arise, because your leadership needs to be fluid and apply to all of the dogs, even the ones that might be a little bit intense when it comes to the dinner bowl, or the dog that's really intense about their prime sleeping area. You can have one dog who's intense about food and another dog intense about sleeping area. So dominant and submissive, oftentimes it's just like this blanket term, and it doesn't give you the nuanced understanding of the individual in front of you. So I would encourage you, when we continue this conversation about leadership, to think about, how do you describe your dogs? Do you fall into the dominant submissive category? And could you find better, more descriptive words? Are you taking the time to look at them as individuals, look at them in context, situationally, and find better words to describe your dog's personality and behavior other than dominant and submissive? Until next time, may you always have a dog to love.